Title Update 22 in Tom Clancy's The Division 2 just dropped, and we got some new options for builds. So let's take a look at how these sets have changed, analyze them, and theory craft some new builds. Stay tuned, what we find might surprise you. I honestly think that I'm the first one to come up with the build in this video, so hopefully I'm not getting too big for my boots. This build would have previously been one of the worst builds ever created, but now, with the new update, it might be one of the best in the game for certain scenarios. We are agonizingly close to 1,000 subs, so join our community by hitting subscribe below. Hey agents, it's Dispatch. Welcome to the channel, where we talk about the math, builds, lore, and game design of Tom Clancy's The Division 2. Let's get stuck into it. So a couple of gear sets got changed with the update. Striker got a tiny nerf, Heartbreaker got a bit of a buff, Umbra got a big buff, and Negotiators got a small buff. I'm not going to be looking at Negotiators today. It's been good and it's still good, but it's different enough that it's kind of its own thing. Striker, Heartbreaker, and Umbra are pretty similar, so we're going to focus on these for this video. So I put a table together to show the multiplicative damage and burst DPS multipliers. Each build has as much critical hit damage as I could theoretically put on the build, all red with the Coyote's mid-range buff and with 26 expertise. This does not include a weapon talent. As we can see, the Striker chest is giving us a significantly higher DPS multiplier at max stacks. Uptime is an issue here. Same could be said of Heartbreaker, since this is taken with the chest. There are other viable options for our chest pieces, especially for Heartbreaker having something like Intimidate, but that might not be viable for something like Legendary. And we also have to consider losing Coyotes, which makes a big difference in these crit star builds. So let's take a look at the results. I'm tracking the inputted stats, and then below are the resultant multipliers, which will all get multiplied together to form the final multiplier, what I've called total amp. This isn't a perfect comparison between these sets, but we can look at specific TTKs maybe in a later video. Let me know if you'd like to see that. The Striker chest piece with Vigilance backpack provided the best results, as to be expected. Vigilance was always providing a higher damage threshold than the Striker backpack, even before the nerf. The challenge here, as I stated earlier, is going to be stacking. The fact is that if Vigilance is lowering our HTK hits to kill, it's also lowering the amount of stacks we can get per enemy. If it isn't lowering our hits to kill, then why are we even running it? Regardless, each player needs to test this themselves to see how effective it is for them regardless of the math involved. Our old standard Striker with backpack and obliterate chest has dropped down and is worse than Heartbreaker, which is somewhat to be expected with the buff to Heartbreaker. But the real surprise here is how close Umbra is to these two. It's just behind them by a hair, and the additional rate of fire should more consistently drive down our TTK, time to kill. Not only that, but Umbra opens the field up to another weapon type that recently got a buff: rifles. Nobody is talking about this. Heartbreaker and Striker builds I don't think will change that drastically, but now that Umbra seems to be viable, we got some new options, and I'm excited to dive into them. Alright, so Umbra. I'm just going to assume you know how it works from one of the many explainer videos on YouTube, so I'm not going to recap it here. In my last video on Umbra, I was underwhelmed and said it needed help. However, now that it's gotten a nice buff and rifles are fully automatic now, things get much better and much more fun. As I discussed in that video, the chest piece is the best, especially with something like rifles, which can't stack obliterate all that quickly. So we're going to stick with that again, since it's even better and makes farming for this build much easier. So now what to choose for the other pieces? The backpack is a tough choice. Memento would be great for solo. It doesn't give us a lot of damage, only about 11% with our 26 expertise all red builds, but the other benefits are very significant. We can go with Composure or Companion for consistent damage, or Vigilance if we can keep the buff up. Unfortunately, the Umbra backpack just isn't great compared to the other options. We want to spend as much time out of cover as possible. Now for the final piece, since we've only got one slot left. If we don't have Memento in the backpack slot, the obvious choice is Coyotes. If we're running an LMG, Contractor's Gloves. If we're running a rifle, we've got Fox's Prayer knee pads or Eagle's Grass gloves. In either of these cases, there's a dark horse piece that we could use. Write down in the comments what you think it is. I'll give you a hint. It just got a buff. That piece is the Hollow Man mask. 14% damage to health is significant, much higher than the 8% from contractors or foxes. Since rifles have relatively high base weapon damage, it might not make a consistent difference in our HTK, but we can look at that in another video. Basically, if we're killing a red in about 7 shots, it'll probably make a difference since changing the veterancy of an enemy doesn't change the amount of health they have. If we're going up against heavies, LMG gunners, warhounds, or mini tanks, we'll definitely see this piece have a big impact. This is what I mean by going from one of the worst builds to one of the best. Using a rifle with Umbra before the update would not have made any sense. The build wouldn't have synergized at all with the semi-auto weapon completely nullifying the rate of fire benefit. However, now that most rifles are fully auto, this works beautifully. Rifles are also lacking in critical hit chance, so the set critical hit chance bonus is also helping us out a lot. Since we got so much crit from the set, I don't think Coyotes is an optimal choice here unless we're running in a group. So what we've got is a couple of options, and we can mix and match based on what you personally want. For the backpack, one piece Zoo with Vigilance or Companion or the Memento. If you're needing an extra 2% critical hit chance to fill out the stat, swap for Jeshka. For the second non-Umbra piece, Foxes or Eagle's Grasp. Eagle's Grasp is definitely going to make a big difference in your hit percentage, especially for the fast-firing rifles that like to tweak out like a hyena shooting gangster style. If you feel like you need more regen or more damage soak, you could use a Bellstone piece or the Forge with the shield, whatever suits your fancy. I found that for me, Foxes and Memento works best. I just can't walk away from the damage that Foxes gives me. The strength of Umbra is bursty damage right out of cover. Since you need to be unstuck from cover, you need that initial damage to be high because you're very exposed in most positions unless you can find high cover. The high initial base damage of rifles plays into the strength, giving you high alpha or starting damage, and the rate of fire increase directly decreases your TTK. With the damage being so high, this means it's harder to get a lower HTK. Alright, so for rifles, what are the best damage talents? Well, for in solo, even at this high of critical hit damage, Killer is a solid option. I wouldn't go with Rifleman because we're using really wild weapons, and we're not going for headshots. Ranger is pretty good if we're playing a bit further due to the recent buff. It doesn't require any special procs, it can do more damage than Flatline, and it doesn't require sacrificing a mod slot. Boomerang is a solid contender, not for the damage, but simply for the fact that it gives you rounds back in the mag, meaning your sustained damage and mag damage gets really high. You can take out many enemies in one mag with this thing. It's solid for solo and group. The best group talent is going to be Sadist, Ignited, or Eyeless. Someone on your team should be running one of these status effects, as they are by far the best weapon talents in the game right now. Sadist is the most likely to be available because of the ongoing directive gear set, which is popular in group content. So, I'd say Boomerang, Ranger, or Sadist are ideal for this build. Now for the rifles you should use a rifle that is automatic, preferably with a 40 or 50 round mag. The M1As will work fine, but with the increased rate of fire you'll be spending a lot of time reloading, which I'm not a fan of. Use a rifle that feels good to you, that you can handle. I love the look of the Lavoa C, but that thing has so much left-right recoil that it's just not a good idea for me to use it. As for skills, you can use pretty much whatever you want. I'll be sticking with the typical boring skills, either a shield, revive hive, striker drone, or decoy, anything to take the aggro or soak damage during your offensive bonus phase. For weapon mods, really prioritize handling mods for accuracy and stability. In particular, the Osprey Suppressor is really good on the muzzle because it gives you additional stability at a minor optimal range reduction. So the final build I'm using is 4-piece Umbra with the chest, Memento, Foxes, Striker Drone, and Decoy, using a lightweight M4 or ACR or Urban MDR or MK17 with Boomerang. All of our minor attributes and mods are either handling related or crit related. Alright, so I really want to hear what you guys think of this build. Is there any way you see to improve it? How would you run it, and what rifles are you running with the new update? Is this an original build, or have you seen someone using this concept somewhere else? Let me know, because I've loved seeing all the great comments on the last couple of videos. That's all for today, agents. So like the video if you liked it, dislike it if you think the build sucks, and tell me why below. Regardless of those two options, tell your friends, relatives, coworkers, affair partners, children, and random people on the street to subscribe to the channel. And until next time, this has been Dispatch. Take care out there.